Hi, everybody. Dan Oman, Mike Beer, taking a look at the feature race at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. It's the Grade 3 $150,000 Royal Delta Stakes. Fillies and Mares going a mile and a 16th, carded as race number 11. You can bet this race and this card with your DRF Bets account. And if you sign up, you'll be privy to a $250 deposit match, a $10 free bet, and free daily racing form past performances. Join now. DRF Bets. Here's the field for the Royal Delta, Mike, and while we only were able to gather 7, I think there are 3 or 4 very talented fillies and mares in this race, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few of them in some of the bigger races into the spring and maybe in the summer even.
I'll agree with you that there's some talent in this field. That being said, the number 2, Kathleen O, for Shug and Castellano, to me, clearly the horse to beat in this race.
We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this event. Not expecting a fast pace. Timeform US's blue bar indicates that this pace might favor horses on or near the early lead. Now, Jungle Juice was on the lead in her most recent start on synthetic. She likes to be forwardly placed. I think there are some class questions for this 7-year-old. Maybe Classy Edition can just pull the right trip, sitting second off that one.
I can see Classy Edition going forward in this race, and I can actually see her making the lead if they want it, Dan. I also feel like the 3 Midnight Stroll is a horse who could get aggressive in here. It's her first start as a 4-year-old here off of a little bit of a layoff, but she's not slow. She's stretching back out, and I feel like this is a spot where they can get aggressive with her.
We're expecting a nice price on the number 1, Don't Get Cozy, who's moving turf to dirt. She's been in the exacta in 25 of 47 lifetime races, although against much tougher competition. Her last race on dirt was a sprint to Tampa Bay Downs. She ran evenly that day. She did finish ahead of a horse that came back to win with an 80 buyer, albeit in a starter allowance. I think this might be too tough of a spot.
Yeah, me too. I mean, she's a pretty cool horse, and she's done a lot of good things on the track. You have to be worried about the significant step up in class here. You also have to be at least a little bit worried about the distance for her, Dan. It feels like she might be just a little bit better going a little shorter than this.
The number 2, Kathleen O, is likely to go favored, and as Mike mentioned, is the horse to beat. She began her career with 4 consecutive wins, 3 stakes, 2 of those graded at Gulfstream Park. She ran okay in the Kentucky Oaks 2 starts back, and then she went to the sidelines for a while. And you can argue she might have needed her most recent race. Going a demanding mile and an eighth off such a long layoff in the Cumley. Kathleen O's going to finish second in here. The 4th place finisher would come back to win the ladies at Aqueduct with a 93 buyer. I love that Kathleen O showed no quit. She kept trying hard all the way down to the line.
That's what I liked about it too. And as you already mentioned, it's 9 furlongs off of a pretty long layoff here, but she's not getting tired at the end of this race. It's a good performance. She started out her career with nothing but good performances, Dan, including those 3 wins here at Gulfstream Park. I remember talking about that Kentucky Oaks leading up to it for, a week or so. I didn't like her at all in that race, and she actually ran pretty well that day. To me, she's just a good horse, and to me, she's way the horse to beat here.
The number 3, Midnight Stroll, however, has a lot of talent. Seems like that she's underrated, and she goes out for a very underrated and excellent trainer in John Terranova. This filly's only really won one bad race recently. That was the Black-Eyed Susan, where she was eliminated pretty much going into the first turn. After that, she was a game winner going 2 turns in the Delaware Oaks, and then in her last 2 races, I think you can argue she's a little bit dirtied up. She ran in the Charlestown Oaks against Society, who just turned out to be really good. Wound up winning the cotillion at Parks with a big buyer speed figure. And then she ran in the Raven Run sprinting behind Wicked Halo, who came back to run 3rd in the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf. And here's Midnight Stroll running 3rd in the Raven Run. A good, honest performance. I like her stretching back out to 2 turns where she can sit a relaxed trip off a moderate pace.
That's what I like too. I like that they're stretching her back out because I preferred her races going a little bit longer last year, even as you mentioned, the Black-Eyed Susan, where she just had an impossible trip. She runs fine in here. Her last 2 starts are just against horses that were better than her. And maybe that's the case once again with Kathleen Owen here, Dan, but she could have position on that horse in this race at Gulfstream Park. I could easily, at the right price, could easily take my chances with Midnight Stroll getting the jump on that horse and maybe holding her off.
and she won off a similar layoff going 2 turns last year and was forwardly placed in that race. Jungle Juice, as we saw in our Timeform US pace projector, is expected to make the lead. She's a solid horse. I'm not sure she's a stakes horse, let alone a graded stakes horse. Getting back to dirt, where she was in against a good one, Will's Secret, 2 starts back at Churchill. She's likely going to just try to go to the lead, drop the anchor, and hope for the best, but there's a chance she may not even make the lead.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if they're going to run her here and they don't scratch her, they're going to have to try to put her on the lead and just see what happens. I couldn't see her getting loose in here, Dan, and I can't see her beating this field if she doesn't get away with murder on the front end.
I've always sort of been confused by the number 5 Classy Edition, a New York bred trained by Todd Pletcher. She won her first 3 starts, and she looked like maybe she was just going to be one of those precocious 2-year-olds, but she ran an okay but no match second to Kathleen O in the Devona Dale last year at Gulfstream at 3. After a 4th place finish in the Gazelle at a distance likely too far, she went to the sidelines. Pletcher excels off layoffs, especially at Gulfstream. Classy Edition came back running at 4. Now, maybe this wasn't the strongest field of first-level allowance races in the world, and Classy Edition looks kind of drifty a little bit here in the stretch, but I think she probably gained a lot from a fitness standpoint.
Yeah, it was a really long layoff going a mile, so I think you don't want to be too hard on her for it. She had a really soft trip in this race. She does drift at the end, but she's also, never really in danger, and she did run a pretty fast race too, so there were positives to take away from it. Like you, I was pretty taken with her first 3 starts. I thought it looked like she was going to be pretty good. And she's still so lightly raced at. I don't think you should be giving up on her too soon.
Now, her last race was first-time Lasix. Lasix, of course, off in this graded stake. I was looking at Todd Pletcher and Formulator. Last out winners, Lasix off. I was very surprised to see 2 for 40 over the past 1 year. Maybe it's an anomaly. Soul of an Angel is up next, the number 6, another horse going turf to dirt. They tried her in the Rampart, 2 starts back, Mike, and she just didn't really fire that day, and I wonder if she belongs against these sort of horses.
Yeah, that's the question I think you're supposed to ask yourself. If you find, if you found something to like about her, she's going to be a huge price in this race, as she should be. But there are already a couple of other horses that we've talked about like her in this field, and it feels like there's some filler in here, along with some otherwise talented horses.
Completing the field is the number 7, Tap Dance Fever, goes out for trainer Gerald Bennett, who pulled off a big surprise over 2-year-old filly champion Wonder Wheel in the Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay last week. And Tap Dance Fever has been in very good form at Tampa Bay. Here's her win in the Wayward Lass, going 1.16 last time out. It wasn't a very strong field. She had to work for it, but she got it done. She seems to have found her niche now. This was a career best 89 buyer performance. She probably has to improve a little bit.
Yeah, I think she does. I mean, it's at least worth noting. It's not the strongest field there, but the horse that she's out finishing there has a lot of talent. There have been a lot of layoffs for past the Champagne, but
yes,
she still, managed to run down a pretty good horse. Listen, the last 2 races of her career are the 2 best she's ever run. You might as well step her up now and see what you have, and she should get a pretty good trip in this race.
I believe we'll see Past the Champagne and the Barbara Fritchie. I'll have to double check that. I believe she was returning off of a lengthy layoff. Top pick time for the Royal Delta at Gulfstream. Mike, you're going with Midnight Stroll. I think if she's the 3rd choice in this race, she's a very strong play. I think she's a little dirtied up off her last 2. And I still think there's something here. She's already a graded stakes winner.
I saw all the same things, Dan. I can take a small shot with her over the 2 Kathleen O, who I feel like is supposed to be pretty tough in here.
Kathleen O is the horse to beat. She's my 2nd selection as well. I'm hoping the Classy Edition can work out a forward trip, get right up close to the pace, and maybe try to sprint on home. Remember, short stretch at 1.16 at Gulfstream Park. 3-2-5-7 for Mike, 5-2-7-3 for me. Nice addition of the Grade 3 Royal Delta. Best of luck.